What's good, everybody? It's your brother Mad Black, the most dangerous and the most toxic black man on the internet. And I am black up in your face again with some more pro black commentary. So, a very aggravating story coming out of Illinois where a black couple were basically thrown out of a hospital while the wife was in labor, and they wound up having to deliver their child on the side of the road. So the story is a black couple, Mercedes and Leon Wells. They were at a hospital, the Franciscan Health Crown Point Hospital in Indiana, and they were there obviously to deliver their baby because Mercedes, she was having her contractions, and they were very close together. At the time that they were at the hospital, I believe that they were 10 minutes apart. So, I mean, anyone who's had a child before should know, when your contractions get that close together, it's pretty much almost inevitable that the baby is going to come very soon, right? So they were there at the hospital, but the nurse kept giving them the runaround because they never got seen by a doctor. She told them the doctor was coming, but the doctor never showed up. And then they checked her, how far her cervix was opening. And they said that, she was not open very far, or her cervix was not continuing to open like it should have, right? So they sent this woman who's, basically sitting there in pain with the contractions. They put her in a wheelchair and just wheeled her out of the hospital. And not too soon, not too long after being discharged from the hospital, on the side of the road, the father, Leon Wells, had to basically deliver his own baby right there in the car. Now, good news and the happy part of this is that, the little girl that they delivered, she's doing just fine. Okay, so she survived, she's doing well, and basically what we're dealing with now is just the trauma from for the mother, and I guess that's probably transferred into the child as well, and also the father, and just this family having to deal with that. Because the father, he said he had no real experience as far as delivering a child or whatever, but to be honest, there's not really much to it. Once the child's coming, it's coming. Basically, it's the after part that you really have to learn about, as far as like disconnecting the cord and stuff like that, and having to make sure your wife is okay. But you know, I feel bad for him that he was put in that type of stressful situation, because as a father, and as a mother as well, but as a father having to deliver his own child, that's a stressful situation to be in anyway. Because you want to make sure that your family is okay and your family is safe, and for the hospital to have no type of sympathy or no type of heart, and just to send them back out there on the road, that's egregious. And it's very, this story made me very angry. I saw it last night before I went to bed. I probably shouldn't have been like watching the news before I went to bed, but it's that's just the way I am sometimes. Sometimes I like to check the weather and everything else before I go to sleep, and I saw this story and it pissed me all the way off. Okay, it made me very angry when I saw that, because that's not something that anyone should have to go through. And the fact that that there are so many deaths with black women and black children in this so-called medical system, things like this is just it's maddening. And if it doesn't make you want to take up arms, or if it doesn't make you want to just go out there and cause a ruckus, I don't know what will, right? Because this is something that should not be happening. Once again, it's tough enough having a child to begin with. There's so many things that can go wrong. As someone who has lost a child, like my first child died of premature birth, it's something that never leaves you. It's very traumatizing, and I can't tell you just how tough it actually is to get through that. And you really never get over it. It's something that always sticks with you. Even, I'll say, with the birth of my second child, it was not the happy occasion that it probably should have been, because my wife and I were worried about the negative outcome that we got the first time. But, the birth of our second child went smoothly as if nothing happened the first time, right? But, having to go through that, you just get scared. Like, it's not, even I remember, like, when my wife got pregnant, there was that fear was still there in the back of our heads after losing our first child, right? So it's a scary thing to have to go through. And the fact that they were put through this, that they were put through the ringer like this is unforgivable. It's not something that money can settle. I'm sure that they'll get a lawsuit or whatever, but money is not something that is going to soothe what you went through there, right? There's going to have to be some real consequences for this hospital and for the staff that was there at the time. There's going to have to be some severe consequences for them for what they did. Really, people should be locked up for that, right? Because you can't just, that's discrimination at the most base of this story. It has to be some sort of discrimination, but at the worst, it's extremely negligent, and it's hostile towards this black woman and her child. And once again, as a black man, that's very infuriating to see that. So, I don't know what's going to come of this, but once again, this is not something that is new. This is something that has been going on in this country for a long time. If you read any type of books about the medical apartheid, and if you read any of the stats of what goes on with black women and black children in these hospitals, because what's interesting is you'll have so many of these people come out here and spout this rhetoric about, black people or black women having abortions or aborting their children. But this is something that they never want to talk about. Like, if you are truly concerned about wanting to save the children, if you're truly concerned about wanting to, protect innocent black life, like black children, why are you not talking about stuff like this? This is a very serious problem when it comes to how hospitals treat black women, or just black people in general, because they feel like we don't feel the same amount of pain. They even did like a study where they asked doctors, do you feel that black people feel the same amount of pain? And they said no. They think that we don't feel pain. This is this is an old stereotype going back to slavery, where they feel like, we don't feel pain, we don't need anesthesia, we can just recover from things quicker. If something bad happens to us, like, we don't need recovery time. They just want to throw you up out of the hospital as soon as possible, right? And then you hear about these stories of people dying once they get home because they didn't have the proper recovery time, or, mothers getting sick, or their children dying later on because they didn't get the proper time in the hospital. They didn't check them properly because they're just trying to rush them out of there, And I know some people in the community, they feel like the solution to this is just to have midwives, or, to deliver your children at home. That is definitely an alternative to consider. However, that's not everybody's, everyone doesn't have that luxury or can go through that. Sometimes you do need a hospital, right? Everyone can't just deliver their children at home. If it's a natural birth, then yeah, but there might be complications there that you are not prepared to deal with, or something that you just can't deal with unless you have a very sterile setting, right? There are certain things that you have to prepare for that you might not be able to do at home all the time unless you have, proper medical training. So this is something to think about. And once again, if we're going to have a society where we're putting tax dollars and stuff into these hospitals, or we're paying into these municipals, then yes, we should have the ability to go to these hospitals without fear of dying when we go in there, right? It's always talked about like as a thing about the black community, or even it's almost like a stereotype, but it's somewhat true, where black people have a fear of the medical community, and it's because of the malpractice and the mistreatment of our people within the medical system. And that's something we have to fight against, because that truly is one of the worst types of racism that's out there, and it's the worst type of racial violence that we go through. Because when you're going to a hospital, you're completely vulnerable. You're seeking help, and the fact that they can take advantage of you that in that way, especially when it is concerning your women and your children that are not even born yet, that they're so vulnerable to attack. This is something that really needs to be considered and something that needs to be fought against. So, you folks let me know how you feel about this story. If you saw it yourself or if you've seen any other commentary on it, let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear your opinions on this, especially from people who have had a negative situation when they went to the hospital, or if you're a parent like me who's lost a child, or maybe you're just a parent who's had a tough outcome or a negative outcome or just whatever. Let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear what you all have to say. Anyway, Mad Black, and I will be back with my foot on the devil's back.